Here we go again, implicit differentiation with the product rule. Easy peasy lemon squeezy here in the front. Multiply and subtract. But notice, if I call 9x my f and y my g, I've got to use the product rule again. That is the derivative of the first, 9 times the second, y, plus the first, 9x times the derivative of y is dy dx is equal to 9, and again, the derivative of y is dy dx. Now, I've got to get these two together, and I'll put the others over here. You know what? Let's just leave these guys over here. They're not bothering anyone. Is equal to 9 dy dx minus 9x dy dx. So all I did is I subtracted 9x dy dx from both sides. 32x to the third plus 9y is equal to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tease out the dy dx by factoring. dy dx is equal to 9 minus 9x, dy dx times 9 minus 9x. Now, I've got multiplication. I'm going to divide by everything that's not dy dx, and I'll get dy dx as I turn it around here. 32x cubed plus 9y divided by 9 minus 9x. And I've got my beautiful derivative. Notice, to find the slope of the tangent, I'd need to substitute both in the x's and the y's. And again, we had to use the product rule here. You want some more implicit differentiation with product rule? Well, here's a great opportunity. If I call 4x squared the f, I'm not going to, well, 4x squared would be a function, but g would not be g of x equals y. That doesn't make any sense. So let's just call these the two curves, 4x squared and y. I'm going to have to use the product rule there. Remember, that's the derivative of the first, which would be 8x times the second, y, plus the first, 4x squared times the derivative of y is dy dx. That is this expanded, finding the derivative implicitly with the product rule. Minus 9 is equal to 4, derivative of y is dy dx. Now, I've got to get these two guys together, so I'll leave this 8xy minus 9 is equal to 4 dy dx minus 4x squared dy dx. I'm going to factor out my dy dx, so I get dy dx. What's left over is 4 minus 4x squared. And here I still get 8xy minus 9. This is multiplication here, so dy dx is equal to 8xy minus 9 divided by 4 minus 4x squared. And we've got our beautiful answer here. We use both the product rule and implicit differentiation, and a lot of algebra here. But once we have this established, notice that below this line, JA, just algebra. Here is a difficult problem because we're asked to use the product rule. And at first blush, we might think also the quotient rule, but it's not necessarily the case. I would say I would write this as 8y cubed minus x times y, I'm going to have to use the product rule, plus 9x to the negative 2 equals 2. So now when I take the derivative, multiply and subtract 24y squared. Remember, we're treating this with the chain rule as well. The derivative of y, if I put that in parentheses there, is dy dx minus, now look what I'm going to do. I'm working here, and I'm going to expand this using the product rule. This minus comes down and says take the opposite of whatever the derivative of this is. So be careful, because at the end, using your algebra skills, we're going to distribute that negative. Product rule, derivative of the first, 1 times the second, y, plus the first, x, times the derivative of the second, dy dx, plus, multiply and subtract, negative 18x to the negative 3 equals, derivative of a constant will be 0. So that takes a little bit of thinking to get to this point. But below this line is just algebra. Let me clean it up. 24y squared dy dx, distribute, doop, minus y, doop, minus x dy dx, minus 18x to the negative 3 equals 0. Of course, I've got to gather these terms because they have dy dx in them. I'll put everything else to the other side. So I have 24y squared dy dx minus x dy dx is equal to, add y to both sides, y, add 18x to negative 3 to both sides, 18x to negative 3. Now, I've got these, dy dx is common to both terms on the left-hand side, so I'll factor out the common factor. 24y squared minus x is equal to y plus 18x to the negative third. Now, I'll divide by everything that's not dy dx to get dy dx is equal to y plus 18x to the negative 3 divided by 24y squared minus x. So there will be our derivative. If you want to leave this numerator as y plus 18 over x to the third, all over 24y squared minus x, you can do that as well. Key step here, take the opposite of, when you expand, you're going to have to distribute that negative. The rest from here down, just algebra, getting dy dx all alone.